How's it going, everyone? So, I did my essay over what I titled Womanhood. Um, mine, my essay was done over Anne Bradstreet, and my name's Jacob Dickinson. Little about Anne. So, she was a mother to 8 children. She was very family oriented, um, husband oriented, and just a Puritan wife that really tried her best to follow the Lord. Um, and from a very young age, poetry was ingrained in Anne's blood. Her mother took part in poetry, her father took part in it as well, and both her parents were highly educated for their time and more of the higher end of society. And she used her work to really express her life, her emotions, and she wanted to be remembered. And her poetry outgrew even her dreams, and she became what they say is the first Puritan woman accredited as a expert poet in New England. So back in the 17th century, during the Puritans' time, a lot of illnesses were fought from a lot of the Puritans, and Anne was no different. She got sick a couple times, and she had smallpox, and that she felt like she may die from when she was young. But even through these risks and these fears, she just took them as a lesson from God, and it just grew her stronger in her faith. And the poem I reviewed was before the birth of one of her children, and so let's dive into it. So, one of the first lines, this section was about her children. Look to my little babes, my dear remains. Um, she feared what she may lose after she dies, and she really gives an urgency of the narrator is giving urgency to who she is speaking to. The poem seems to be more of like a request um, to who she is talking to. And if thou love thyself or lovest me, um, she's begging her husband if he has love for her or even himself, she'll take the responsibility of their children seriously. And just a crazy stat, preschoolers living with one natural and one step parent were 40 times more likely to become child abuse cases. So Anne's fear wasn't to have her husband remarry after her death. She was okay with that. But what she wasn't okay with was him finding the wrong woman that would abuse her children, that wouldn't take care of her children. And it's just not a surprise, but saddening that even back then and even now, abuse like this still happens. But she didn't just care for her children, she cared for her family. She cared for her husband. How soon, my dear, death may my steps attend? Anne had an urgency in her writing. She did not know if death was close or at her door, um, but she was just preparing just in case. How soon may be thy lot to lose thy friend? She is expressing or attempting to express to her husband that he could lose her at any point in time. She wants to prepare him just so he's not shocked and he can still take care of the children and go on with life. We both are ignorant, yet love bids me. Um, her letter is more like a will when she does die, um, but she doesn't forget to express her love for her husband. And she was a loving wife. Um, these farewell lines to recommend to thee. She is essentially telling her husband uh, farewell. So if she doesn't get the opportunity to do it, That when that knot's untied, that made us one. Um, Anne understood death could be near, could take her at any time, and when they were married, the knot was tied. They were husband and wife, but once she dies, her husband becomes widowed. What nature would, God grant to yours and you, even with the feeling of death close by. Um, she was still very rich in her faith, praying to God, trusting in God, and knowing that He has a plan. The many faults that, well, you know I have. We all have faults, we all have flaws, and Anne was no different. And she had humility to explain that to her husband and explain that to the readers, that she knows she has flaws, but um, she still requested and wanted it to be her flaws to be sent to the grave with her. In our primary book, Anne Bradstreet has 17 articles of her work. Again, I don't think she would have ever imagined that um, now, currently, we would be studying her work across America, across um, so many different colleges, and studying her words. The many faults that will you know I have, let be interred in my oblivious grave. Again, she wanted to be remembered for all the great things she did, a great mother, a great wife, a great poet, and she wanted her flaws to be buried. If any worth or virtue were in me, she wanted her name to bring remembrance of positivity and hope. She made her poems for not only her family, but New Englanders of her time. And kiss this paper for thy love's dear sake. She, again, is writing this as a will to her husband, to one directed reader, to remember her words, her request, her will, and just come back to it, to remember. With some sad sighs, honor my absent hearse. Again, the very least, Anne Bradstreet wanted to be remembered. And her poetry went beyond her dreams. Again, it's amazing to think that her poetry that is so old is still being studied now. And she just wanted to be a good follower of the Lord, a good wife, and a mother to her children. She didn't fear death or meeting God. She saw it as His plan. She leaned on Him. She leaned on His words. Um, she just feared what death would mean for those she left behind, her husband, her children. And because of these fears, she used her skills as a poet to write about her life, it seems, and her belief in her children and future New Englanders, so they can study from her words and they can learn. Similar to what her mom did to her. Her mom wrote poetry and she picked up poetry and started succeeding. I appreciate you for sticking around this long if you did. Uh, Thank you for going through this PowerPoint with me. I hope it was interesting, and I just thank you. Have a good one.